I thought I was going to go back into the incarnation series today. Well, I'm not. Actually, what I'm going to do, there was a lot in last week, I realized that, and over the rest of the month, I'm going to break it down, each kind of like section that I was talking about. So just want to remind you once again that, because I think it's important, the way God speaks, not just through one person, but through people. And just as a reminder, we got that text from Ethan where he was talking about a year of breakthrough, and that was before I brought this message last week. It was the week before, and also actually the day that I brought this message last week, Aaron Gaspar sent in a text message from Isaiah 43 about God doing a new thing in places that you wouldn't think that God would be doing things, but they're absolutely necessary that he does, because there's no water in a desert. Well, God's going to make water in the desert. He's going to bring provision in the wilderness. A variety of different things that are unusual, unique. That would be going in the direction of a new thing. Anyway, so keeping in mind the words breakthrough, new thing, the word that I got for 2018, I'm not saying for the whole world, for the church, the whole thing. And what I said last week was that 2 Kings 6 is a continuation of 2 Kings 5. And you say, well, of course it is. One follows the other. But what I mean is that 2 Kings 6 begins with the word and, which shows that it's intrinsically connected to the previous chapter. It's a bad place for a chapter breakdown, but we've got what we've got. But I was comparing the essence of 2 Kings 5 and 6, the way it's written. It's almost like saying, listen, we make choices. And here's a character called Gehazi who makes a choice based on what's in it for me. And then we get to the next chapter where the servants, they're called prophets. Prophets are called servants. It doesn't matter which word we use. But they're not looking at it like what's in it for me. But they're looking at it like servants should, what's necessary for us. Now, I know that we all make choices on a daily basis. So it's not like making choices is this revelatory thought. But I think as we break down the choices that we make, and it happens very quickly, we do go through a process of thinking about ourselves, thinking about others, the ramifications, whatever. I think we generally tend to think of ourselves first, to be honest with you. Mm-hmm. So I'm not trying to all I'm trying to do is kind of say, I think this year is going to be a unique year where we are going to have this idea about thinking about myself or others a little bit more balanced. Yesterday, but Mark, we had an exchange back and forth, and he told me that he hadn't shoveled his driveway yet. And he didn't think he was going to because he just can't stand the idea of shoveling his driveway. I wrote him back and I said, yeah, I loved shoveling for 4 hours. I mean, it was great. I'm exhausted, and everything else.
Frozen.
I said, but man's got to do what a man's got to do. Because that's a really good example of course I don't want to do that. Who in their right mind, I don't want to do that. But if me and my family are going to have access to the road, it's going to have to get done. So I do something that I don't really want to do. So what I'm saying is, at the beginning of this whole thing, I would never want to give the indication that you shouldn't think about yourself. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that we're going to be presented with a lot of situations, I'm convinced, this year, where we're going to have choices to make. Anyway, let's read the story one more time. 2 Kings chapter 6, just the first 6 verses. While you're reading it, for the rest of us, listen to how often the words we, us, every man, the insinuation is always corporate. The only emphasis that we get for one person is the guy who actually loses the axe head. Other than that, all the implications, the difference between Gehazi, who lies, who cheats, who hides stuff, greed, what's in it for me, when we get to the next chapter, it couldn't be more the opposite. And that's why I'm convinced that we're being handed this thing that says, okay, so which is it going to be? Gehazi or being a servant of God? Go ahead.
Now the sons of the prophets said to Elisha, Behold now, the place before you where we are living is too limited for us. Please let us go to the Jordan, and each of us take from there a beam, and let us make a place there for ourselves where we may live. So he said, Go. Then one said, Please be willing to go with your servants. And he answered, I shall go. So he went with them, and when they came to the Jordan, they cut down trees. But as one was felling a beam, the axe head fell into the water. And he cried out and said, Alas, my master, for it was borrowed. Then the man of God said, Where did it fall? And when he showed him the place, he cut off a stick and threw it in there and made the iron float.
So that's our story. We're not going to go through the whole thing today. Like I said, I'm going to break it down, and I'm just going to major on the first part, the Jordan thing. Like I said last week, the key to this whole thing is the Jordan. Now, the previous chapter, not to go through the whole story again, but it's that story where Naaman seeks his healing from Elisha, and Elisha tells him to go dip in the Jordan 7 times. And he does, after going through some mental and emotional trials that his servant leads him out of. He doesn't want to do it. I don't want to go dip in that muddy thing. But his servant convinces him to do it, and he does. And we didn't read the story, but after the 7th time he comes up, and he's totally free of leprosy. Now, Elisha's servants would have known that. The prophets, they all would have known that. So to say, let's go to the Jordan, let's get some wood from there, think about another way that they're saying it. Let me have one of those ministries. Now that's what I'm into. Let's go to the Jordan and see if we can start seeing people get healed of leprosy. There's something about the Jordan. There's that part of it. Elisha knows, though, that the Jordan is a place. It may be true that great, marvelous, and wonderful things happen as a result of getting through the Jordan. But Elisha, more than anybody, knows the Jordan is also a place of suffering. And he could easily say to them, Naaman went through an overhaul in his personality before he went into the Jordan, before he came out as a new thing. What I'm trying to say, the Jordan is symbolic from cover to cover in the Bible. The Jordan is a place of separation and preparation. There's something always on the other side of the Jordan, the other end, if you would. And what is really being said, we step into the Jordan with a view of, I am willing to submit to the suffering necessary to enter into the new thing that God has prepared, that we cannot get into unless we go through the Jordan, because it's on that side. It's not on this side. This side is the old place. On the other side of the Jordan is the new place. In between is the Jordan. And the Jordan is a place of saying, okay, something's got to go. I can bring some things with me, but some things have got to go. And it's not going to be necessarily a Sunday school picnic. Some things are going to have to go. The rivers are nicer in Syria. So what? He told you to go into that river. Did I come all this way? He won't even come out and talk to me. So what? You've got a word. Go dip in the Jordan. If he told you to do something great, wouldn't you do it? Well, of course he would. He's a very successful general of an army. He'd do whatever it takes. That's stupid. So what? Go do it. Naaman had to come to a place of totally, getting outside of the way he thinks. And this is huge, getting outside of the way we think and start to think the way God thinks and start to be more obedient and faithful in that direction. And in between, anything that grows suffers. That's the nature of growth, is suffering. If you don't want to suffer, 2 things happen. You won't grow. Tell you right now, you won't grow, and you will never get into the new thing. That's the way it works. So, I find it kind of interesting that Gehazi, he's one of the servants, that when Elisha is telling Naaman to go into the Jordan, Gehazi is able to tell somebody else to go to the Jordan, but he's not willing to go there himself. I'll say that again. Gehazi, he can tell Naaman, he's willing to tell somebody else to get into the Jordan, but he doesn't want to build anything there himself. He goes and he chases Naaman for the goods, and he hides him and all that kind of stuff. In any event, the Jordan, taking a beam from there, Remember, a beam is something that you build the houses with. You build some kind of something with. And they're saying, let's go to the place. I'm convinced that they think that they're going because there's a successful ministry at the Jordan. That's where people get healed of leprosy. Let's build from there. And Elisha's looking at him saying, yeah, but do you understand what's going to happen once you get there? Do you understand that the Jordan is a place of suffering? You just don't go and build. If you're going to build, it's going to require something of you. So Elijah's like, yeah, all right, sure, let's go, kind of thing. The thing is, as I'm trying to say, that I'm not looking at the suffering. Who for the joy that was set before him. Remember that from Hebrews 12? Who for the joy set before him. He could see the other side of the Jordan. He could see the new thing. He could see new life. He could see a new spirit, newness of life. But it was on the other side. He knew that the way from here to there was not wishful thinking or trying to take a helicopter. It wasn't going to happen that way. We're not looking at the suffering aspect of it, but the enlargement and the expansion that follows. Mary, would you go to John chapter 10, read verse 40? This is halfway through John's book, but by the time John gets to John 10, Jesus is now on his way to Jerusalem. He's facing Jerusalem, and he knows what's going to happen in Jerusalem.
And he went away again beyond the Jordan to the place where John was first baptizing, and he was staying there.
Jesus heads beyond the Jordan.